Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for coming. Thanks for delaying your nap time. I appreciate it. I also promise you will not be disappointed. We are happy on behalf of the Resident Association to welcome Dr. Charles Edwards back to the Pines. When Chuck was here a couple years ago, he brought his first book, Much Abides, which had great little tips on positive aspects of aging. Today, he's going to talk about his second book, which is Late Fragment, about that last part of your life, that late fragment, where sometimes, your body doesn't quite want to do what your head wants it to do, or you look in the mirror and you know that lovely person, but it's not quite the same as you saw before. Or you may be missing someone who was very dear to you. So Chuck will have some tips for us. The book will be available out in the lobby, cash, check, credit card, and thanks to the generosity of Wendy Tobin, you may charge it on your Pines bill. Dr. Edwards was a practicing cardiac surgeon in Charlotte when a tremor in his hand necessitated a change in careers. He'd always been interested in dementia and Alzheimer's, all the related illnesses, because both of his parents suffered from dementia. So he went to Johns Hopkins and got some additional training in that area and came back to Charlotte and opened a clinic called Memory and Movement Charlotte with the help of his lovely wife. So I'm happy to introduce you to Chuck Edwards. I know you'll enjoy hearing from him.
Okay. Now, am I live here? Bill, have you got it going? Come here. Well, it's always nice to get invited back. So I want to thank Jackie Hills for arranging that. I've had so many patients here, and when I look out in the audience, I see last time I had several people that I had operated on when I was still doing surgery, and some of those faces are gone now. And I always dedicate a talk that I give to those people who aren't there. And it's really important that we remember who they were. And part of one of the grab bars that we have later in life is to reconnect with them. And I'll talk a little bit about that. As many of you are aware, my life has changed rather dramatically since the last time I was here. In December, I stopped seeing patients. And I thought it would kill me, but it didn't. It's interesting though, ever since I stopped working, I have this strange feeling that people are waiting for me somewhere, or there's somewhere I'm supposed to be, or something very important that I'm supposed to do. And it gives me tremendous anxiety. And my wife, Mary, points out, she said, you don't have anybody waiting for you, and no one cares what you do today, which causes me tremendous anxiety. So one of the things about, I'm slowly getting used to it. Careers provide so much structure. And we always have the illusion that what we're doing during our careers are just so important, and the world depends on what we're doing. Well, after a while, you begin to realize that you weren't quite as vital as you thought. Experience that alters perception and behavior in our age group is called wisdom. There's no regret to not doing it. It just means that we are going to develop new perspectives and a new way of looking at life. That's what we're going to talk about today. I'm here because I've written 2 books. The first was in 2020, Much Abides, and it was called A Survival Guide for Aging Lives. The second was published just this year, and it's called Late Fragment, and I'll describe why. I'll tell y'all why. It's notes on the later stages of life. Now, I have been accused of being arrogant. Sometimes I take it as a compliment. But how can this burned out heart surgeon say that he has written a book and it's a survival guide for aging lives? Well, I'm going to double down on the arrogance here, in that what we're going to cover today is so important, and that if you open your heart just a little bit and open your brains a little bit, what we talk about has the potential to change your life. And I don't say that lightly, but one of the things about both books, Arise or Arose, from these last 10 years of my taking care of patients, losing their memories, and also taking care of the families that are caring for them. This experience has changed me as a person, and it's changed me profoundly as a physician. I had no idea when I left Johns Hopkins. I thought I knew what I was getting into, and I really didn't have any idea. I had no concept of how close I would become to the patients and how close I would become to the families. And so what came out of the first book, of course, was it focused on the transition from careers to retirement. And it also stimulated in me an interest in what does normal aging look like. So those are the two themes in that book. And as we age, even now, it's important that if you have an instance where you're really worried about your memory, or you've made a couple of glitches, and we're going to talk a little bit about that, go back and look at that, because one of the things it tells you very clearly is what not to worry about. And I'm going to share those things with you today. The second book comes from a much deeper place, and it covers the later stages and actually the last stages of life. Now, one of the things that I've been given as a blessing in my life is to be allowed to be in the sphere around sick people. It's a tremendous privilege because people have to trust you in order to allow you to be in that. It's not for everybody. There are people that shouldn't be there, and there are people that aren't there that should be, that would be perfect at it. But the second book, I spent a lot of time with people in the late fragment. I'm going to define it here in a second. And it's very interesting because the time of probably the highest respect that doctors ever had was at the end of the 18th century and the beginning of the 19th century. They were held in very high esteem, sometimes almost godlike. And yet, when you think back to that time, there was no way that they could impact the diseases that they were asked to take care of. They didn't have any of the knowledge and didn't have any of the resources. So what did they do? They were with those families, and they were in those houses when people were suffering. Now, we have never, as physicians, had more impact on diseases and had more potential to save lives than we do now. But yet, the esteem of doctors and the respect has plummeted. You'll go to the emergency room, and someone will do something, and they may even save your life. And they'll say, "How was it in the emergency room?" "Well, I had to wait 6 hours for them to save my life. It just wasn't worth it." Okay, So I learned that my taking care of dementia, when Alzheimer's looked in that microscope in 1905 and saw those tangles and those plaques, and he made the diagnosis in that lady, Auguste Dieter, I have no more chance of impacting the disease today than he did in 1905. Now, things are changing. Sometimes they change too fast, but things are changing. And of course, my hope is that we have something that is going to show improvement or at least stabilization. The markets have gotten a little bit ahead of themselves, and we're going to talk about that. All right, here we go. Late fragment is defined as the interval in lives that's beyond career, beyond early and mid-retirement, beyond travel, and beyond volunteering. Okay? It's the time in the world, it's the time that the world thinks that everything in your life that has any meaning at all has already happened. Okay? So everything, all the good stuff is over. Oh, wait, there's one other thing that we haven't taken into account, and that's your own death. Now, who in the world would want to write a book about this? Okay? Who would be so crazy to have to bring that up because no one wants to talk about it? And if you go around, you're not going to find a lot of books that have been written about this. I can just tell you. All right, my wife, Mary, you know, when she said, "What are you working on?" And I told her, and she said, "Well, that's going to be a real thigh slapper. You know, people are going to really love hearing that." So let me tell you how I started in on this kind of terrifying subject. I was scheduled to give a talk at one of the retirement, the CCRCs in Charlotte. And I projected myself forward into the audience. I knew what this audience would look like, okay? These were going to be people in their mid-80s, late 80s, and sometimes early 90s. And the main theme for Much Abides about the transition from careers to retirement, they had already done that. That's not what they needed. And so I began to think about this group toward the end of their lives. What is it that they were thinking about? What were their hopes on any given morning? What were their fears? What did their lives constitute? And I started thinking about this, and I became almost obsessed with this period of lives. As I said in the introduction to Late Fragment, I said that it's been almost suffocating. But I've interviewed over 70 people. Almost everyone that I saw in the office, I was interviewing them. And what I was looking for were a lot of those aha moments that allowed me to see this interval a little bit clearer. I actually had to stop writing it about a year into it. Some of the people that I had interviewed had died. I'd become very close to them. And two shadows started to come over me. The first shadow was the lives of the people in the Late Fragment. And I started to realize that even the people that said, "Oh, I got this. This is the best time of my life," it was still very complicated. And oftentimes, I wasn't a very good interviewer at first. I didn't ask the right questions. I allowed people with an agenda to sort of guide me. And then I realized what questions I needed to ask. And more important, I learned what the answers meant. And then I was able to get a much clearer picture. And at first, it was very hard because it is a hard period in life. And that's what the book is about. The second shadow came over me. And it was, do you really want to get into this now? You're going to have to deal with it at some point in time. Why not just wait? And maybe you'll get hit by lightning before you have to get through it. And, so I had my son. My son teaches history at Charlotte Latin School, and he actually teaches writing to other teachers. But he's very, he doesn't pull any punches. You know, he'll tell me, "Chuck, Dad, this doesn't really work here." Okay. But I had him read it. And I said, "Chuck, do you think that there's enough here for me to keep going?" And he came back and he said, "Dad, I think that a lot of the stuff that you've written is really good, or the topics that the ideas that you're getting into." He said, "But you're pulling your punches here. You're getting to a point and you're not telling the reader the truth. you're not getting to the point where you can really help them. And that freed me up, made me mad, but it freed me up. And that's where the whole book started to come. And it wasn't as if I wanted to write it. It was because I had to write it, because of the people that are in the late fragment. The books share three themes, and one is time. Time is never precious until you get close to the time that it runs out, okay? On any given morning, we think that the time that we're spending today doesn't really matter. I don't sense the passage of time, and I go, if I don't do what I'm supposed to do today, I'll just do it tomorrow. Also, time. How much time do we have left? And what am I going to do with that time that's going to matter to me until I'm gone? And when I'm gone, to the people that I love and the people that I'm responsible for. So when we have that deadline, time, it brings everything into focus. We're going to talk about that. The second is every phase of our lives, every phase, requires a different set of values and a different perspective. When we're in college, we have the best, it's the best time. It's 4 years where, and I hate to see these demonstrations, and they're sitting there with these squawkers and repeating these inane, I mean, that wouldn't have come close to us, when I was in college. And so, but it's a time of innocence, and it's a time of learning and experiencing things. And I feel very fortunate. I think all of us felt fortunate. A lot of our education came at a time that was much more innocent and much more maybe vulnerable. Now, everybody seems to think that they already have the answers. They didn't need to go to college, okay? They really don't. But if we use the skill set that we had when we were in graduate school or in college and try to run a company, we're going to be out of phase. So every phase in life has different perspectives and different demands. And we have to get close to that harmonic. What's going on here in order to stay valuable, in order to stay relevant. The third thing is, and this is crucial, that the importance of human interaction and how those bonds change when we get older. That statement that the most important part of our lives is connection to other people. It might be friends, it might be family, it might be children, it might be grandchildren, but it is where value comes from. And those relationships become even more vital. You would think, oh, when I had all my buddies and we were in college, or we were in the corridors of power and we were a physician or a lawyer, that we had all these colleagues. They're not anywhere near as important as the people in this room are to you all now. It is the most important thing as far as relevance and joy if we live long enough. All right, let's begin with time. In the United States today, there are 80,000 people that are 100 or over. 80,000. To show you how long people are living, 26 years from now, in 2050, that number will be 400,000. Okay? I don't know if I can say it. I'm going to do the math here a little bit, but there are some people in this room that may be still alive at that time, okay, in 2050. The numbers work for you. If you get to 70, the average age of lifespan of a person that makes it to 70 is 85. If you make it to 80, you get a tremendous pop. And the average age at death, average, is 89. You make it to 90, 95 is the number. You make it to 100, they're going to give you 2 more years, 102. Okay. What a gift modern medicine has given us. What a gift. Here, we're living longer and we're healthier. Antibiotics, vaccines, We don't realize that at the turn of the century in 1900, out of every 12 women died in childbirth. So one of the major health improvements has been the safety of having a baby. Also, oral health, dental hygiene. I think fluoride, everybody's going to roll their eyes, but it's helped us keep our teeth much stronger. Because oral health is important, and we are going to talk about that. Sadly, every year since 1900, the lifespan of American has increased up until 2020. And that's when it started to go down gradually. And it's gone down each year from then. And the reason is because of fentanyl, not because of COVID. Because a lot of the people that were afflicted with COVID were already in the late fragment, and their lifespan had already been, they had probably already outlived their lifespan. But we've lost over 100,000 young people between the ages of 15 and 25 each year because of fentanyl. All right, let's talk a little bit about this time benefit. There's a catch to it, all right? The catch is, am I going to be able to be in school any longer with this health benefit? Am I going to be able to, now career is going to be a little bit longer, and our retirement will probably be a little bit more active, but I'm not going to spend more than 4 years at UVA. I'm not going to have my children with me any longer. Be careful what you wish for on that, okay? Sadly, no. This health benefit is going to be tacked on to the end. It's going to be a late fragment. The term late fragment comes from a poem by a short story writer and poet named Raymond Carver. Raymond Carver is known for his raw use of words and scenes. Never backing up, never having any sort of conscience about making people anxious in his stories. They are in your face. And I knew that he would be a perfect vehicle for the title of the book. And he got to be 40 years old and was trying to kill himself with alcohol. And he was in the hospital and he was dying. And he quit drinking at that time and lived 10 years. Died of lung cancer. He still smoked or whatever. But he wrote a poem called Late Fragment. And it reads like this. It says, "And did you get what you wanted out of life? Even so." The answer to that was, I did. And what did you want? To call myself beloved and to feel beloved on this earth. Now, there's a couple of things in there, just 2 questions and 2 answers, but there's a term, even so. It's slang, almost doesn't mean anything, even so. But what it means in the poem is all the ups and downs that we've had in our life, okay? Was this a life worth living? Was there things, all of us, none of us get out of this perfect, okay? And as we age, there is a tendency to focus on the things that are negative instead of the things that were positive. You wake up at 2 a.m. in the morning, and I call them the hours of despair. Boom. Something's put there that happened that you don't like. It's amazing. So even so, I think he's trying to get us to maybe forgive ourselves a little bit and not be quite so harsh or have such high standards. We're human. We make errors. We deal with other humans. And those mistakes and that bizarreness seems to exponentially increase. But there are probably as many definitions to what the term beloved means. Each one of you would have a different term. It might be that you felt beloved from someone that you worked with, who you were a mentor to, or someone that became close to you and gave you advice. It might have been a lover. It might have been a spouse. It might be family members. Whatever it is, I will tell you one thing, that the term is going to be connected to other human beings. To have that feeling of being beloved on the way out is going to be from other humans. The single source of value and joy in every life is the connections to other humans. My goal with the book is not to have you walking around thinking about death all the time. Okay, that's not the point of the book. What I'm after is sort of a subtle acknowledgement that there is a time limit to this play, to this story. And by realizing it, it's important for us to get certain things done, okay? We need to get stuff done, important stuff for those who we're leaving behind. And when we think about the fact that there is a time limit, it might help us to forgive, to approach people with an idea of reconnecting and forgiveness, because that's where those feelings of being beloved will come from. And sometimes if we don't think there's a time limit, we always have a chance to make it right, okay? But that's not the way it works. The book Late Fragment is divided into 3 parts. The first is entitled Background. I define what it is, the interval we're talking about, and I define who's in it. If you yourself are not in the late fragment, the book doesn't resonate, okay? If you're not caring for someone who's in the late fragment, or you're not in it yourself, the book will not resonate, okay? Because people, when you are 22 years old, you think you're going to live forever, and you don't even want to talk about death. You don't even think that's possible. You are going to live forever, okay? Who's in? Old people, lots of them. And just living a long time, you get a bid for the late fragment, okay? You're in it. The other groups that are in there are people who have early disabilities. I talked a lot about that. And then late disabilities, those of us who suffer a stroke or a heart attack, or our energy has been taken away. And then I have a chapter on caregivers and their role in the late fragment. Those are 2 pretty good stories, and I won't go into those right now. Evidence for aging is seen and it's felt, okay? What is seen is that we look in the mirror. Actually, Jackie Hills just stole my line. And we see the effects of aging on our face. We see some wrinkles, we see some coarsening of the features, and it's almost like we're looking at a stranger. Who the hell is that, okay? We see these wrinkles in our neck, everywhere, and we think, my God, what the hell's happened to me? Second thing is that the evidence is felt. You do something athletic, you play pickleball, you go do something, the next day you can't move, okay? You're all, frozen up, and your balance, you're walking downstairs and you're looking at the stair saying, if I miss a stair, I'm gone. So we feel that stiffness. Now, there's a way that we can prevent this from happening. But that means that we're going to have to die before all these ravages of age settle in. And I just as soon have the wrinkles, to be honest with you, okay? If the goal, though, is to live a long life, and we get that gift, we cannot undermine the satisfaction of having made it by resenting the compromises inherent in the process, okay? So how we deal with aging is the topic, okay? It is everything. If we are willing to accept and adapt, okay, I'm going to read one little thing here and see if I can. We live long enough, we are forced to deal with the effects of time on our bodies and minds. The question is, what does deal with mean? Does it mean fight against the decline? Yes. Does it mean doing everything in your power to minimize the damage? Absolutely. Does denying that they are occurring or resenting the results have a place? No. Okay. So it's how we deal with it. I just had a high school reunion planning, and there were about 20 of us there, and these were all my buddies, and we just, a lot of us have stayed close, so we wanted to have a nice thing next year. And the person that was the chair kept saying, you know, we can't have it in that place because there's stairs. And you say, what are you talking about? We're not that damn old that we can't, you know, go upstairs. And so everybody's real resentful. And then there was another person that just didn't want to talk about aging at all. Okay. She was angry. She was not interested in any allusion to aging. So here, giving up to it too easy is not dealing with it. And then not recognize it, that saying, I'm not getting old, I'm going to be young forever, is very pathological. Okay. And you see that in people. Okay. You see that. Okay. The late fragment, our last act, has the potential to be the best of times, but it's tricky. Making you aware of the pitfalls and the traps is a major part of the book. Now, part one is background, part two is jeopardy. That's where I take you through some stories. In fact, every one of the chapters is a story about a patient or a friend or a colleague or whatever. And what I do is I allow you to see the mistakes of others, and you say, oh, I'm not going to make that mistake. Or you're going to see yourself in one of the stories, okay? What I want to do is to carry out of that a vigilance of saying, I see what he's talking about. If I get on that trail, I'm going to be on the wrong road, okay? And that's a hard part of the book, because I have to take you to those places before I can give you the solutions. I can give you the grab bars, and we're going to talk about those in a minute. The problem, and what's tricky about this, is that in our careers in early retirement, there's always a future. And the definition of time is, I'll always have time to adapt. If we make a bad decision, we can always come back. We don't need to worry about that. In the late fragment, the definition of time is completely different. The definition of future is very different. In our careers, we always plan ahead. We size it up. We know that we can sacrifice to make it happen. We take our wits and challenge the system. In the later stages of life, that's not what works, okay? We have to be strategic. Somebody has moved the goalpost. They've altered the rules. Actually, it's worse than that. It's not even the same game. So how we deal with our perceptions, our anger at certain things, how we adapt, what new perspectives that we develop in the late fragment are going to determine how connected we are to others, how relevant we maintain or are able to remain, and how much joy we have. All right. What are the signs we are on the wrong track? Okay. As I said, I interviewed about 70 individuals, and I learned what the specific challenges are, and I simply told their stories, what gets us into trouble, and hopefully how to avoid it, learning from the mistakes of others. I'm going to read you, I'm going to tell one story. It's not here. It's in a place just very similar to this. And a couple moves from a very idyllic situation, which most of y'all have, and they come to a place like the Pines. And for some reason, it just doesn't work. What they're thinking about is the life that they had back in the town that they were from. And they are convinced that they've made a bad decision. So I'm going to read you, there's some defiance in the couple. They are defiant. They are angry and they're trying to decide whether to move back. And I said, well, what do you miss about that? And the husband says, I miss my golf buddies. I miss sitting playing cards with people. I miss taking vacations with our friends. And I miss the church that we're in. And I said, well, are those friends still there? Well, no, two of our closest couples, one moved to Richmond, one moved to Pinehurst. They're no longer there. What about, and the wife said, I love my garden club, but it's shut down. The illusion that you can go back to what you had prevents you from the hard work of making a life out of what you have left. So I'm just going to focus on the defiance just a little bit. And let me see if I can find this. Now that we've established the real enemy, not the move, but the attacks on us from the passage of time, we can use the weapons we possess more strategically. You have drawn the lines of defense too close to you. You have not included your husband, and he is suffering from the isolation and anger. I want the defiance to say, I'm going to protect this marvelous man, and the two of us will be a formidable fight to fight this potential for despair. I want the defiance to say, my attitude, my perspective can make any situation better, and I refuse to let selfish, negative thoughts undermine my struggle. I want the defiance to say, I have room for new friends, and can I connect with them to give and receive help when needed? I want the defiance to say, I realize now that I have to connect with others through our shared vulnerabilities, not with the remorse of things I have lost. One thing that's really important is that as we age, especially in the late fragment, we connect on our humanness. We don't connect on successes. No one wants to hear how much money you made, or one club that you belong to, or one hotel that you stayed in Rome that was perfect. No one wants to hear about it, okay? What it is, but when people come with that, people are backing up, they're moving away. And when you're coming with connecting on vulnerabilities, what's going on today? I have a thing about every one of the retirement centers. The only thing that matters is the culture of caring about one another. It is consummate. Now, sure, a really fun trip and still traveling and doing that stuff, yes, that's part of the defiance. But remember, the defiance is that I'm really not one of the group here. I'm not this age. Oftentimes the people say that are older than everybody. And also all of the successes. It's nice that you've had that and to feel proud, but that's not what's going to make you successful later in life. All right. So, all right, I want to go to Much Abides just for a second. And in Much Abides, I identify 10 common mistakes that people make that undermine their joyfulness. And I'm going to just go over 2 of them. I've saved the other 8, the real important ones, the other 8, for people who buy the book, okay? So, all right, the number 1 is not being aware of the effects of aging on our brains. Every week I have people call me and they say, Chuck, I'm losing it. I'm absolutely losing it. And I had one friend that left the freezer door open 2 nights in a row. And he was sure that he was losing it. His wife came down, she rolled her eyes. We brought him in and got him tuned up, and there was nothing wrong with him. He was having a little trouble sleeping. But so I came up with this about things not to worry about. Okay, the first thing is names. I don't care about you remembering names. You're going to ruin your dinner every night. You're sitting in the dining room and someone walks in and you go, and Dale will be talking to his wife and he'll say, what's that guy's name? I think I did a prostatectomy on it 20 years ago, but I'm not sure, okay? So, and then you think about it, it ruins your evening. Okay. And then they come over to speak to you and you realize they have no idea who you are either. Forget the names, your ability to remember names. Now you can remember everything about them, every single thing about their face. And I'll see some guy and I'll say, I remember his sister was the best looking girl at Randolph-Macon. Everything about him, I just can't come up with Joe Blow. It doesn't matter. The second thing is technology. Technology has changed aging. All right. And I'll tell you why. My brother and I had a grandfather. He was from South Boston, Massachusetts, consummate Irishman. He walked in here, he'd have a Panama hat on, seersucker, two-tone shoes, those brown and white or black and white shoes, and you felt like you were in the presence of God. Okay. He knew everybody. Every time he walked in, of course, he never left South Boston. So, but it was just this reverence we had for him. He would take us to battlefields all the time. He didn't finish the 8th grade. Okay, he was a smart man, but he didn't finish the 8th grade. He would take us to a battlefield. And when we were 8 years old and 5 years old, he'd tell us these stories. Okay, and there would be dead. He would say the Rebs were up to your, waist here, and it was fantastic. And then when you got a little older, you read the signs and he didn't have any idea what was going on in that battle, okay? And in fact, one time he was telling us all about the Rebs and the Yankees and, it was a Revolutionary War battlefield, okay? So, but the deal was that he was still, and I remember almost all the things he told us, all the trips he took us on, it was reverence. My grandchildren don't have quite that respect for me because they think they're smarter than I am on the technology. They will literally take my phone out of my hand and flick it and hand it back to me, or my iPad. They think because they're more savvy on technology, they're smarter than I am. And those little bastards are going to come up to a real shock here, pretty soon. All right. Going into a room and forgetting and going out is always disconcerting, okay? You're putting up a picture and all of a sudden you leave to go to the storeroom to get something and you have no idea why you're there. And it just doesn't come. Don't waste any time down there. Walk straight up and you'll say, oh yeah, a nail is what I need, and it'll all come to me. Some of y'all have heard this story. I want you all not to let glitches and mistakes affect you. And some of you have heard this story, but it's so clear that I'm going to repeat it. I have any of y'all from Charlotte, there's a Park Road, goes over the creek by the old Giant Genie. And now there's a Harris Teeter there. But I used to see patients in their homes or in their facilities on Thursday. So Thursday morning, I'd start at the Mugs. It's a coffee place right in that shopping center. And I have a patient whose wife has a kiosk there. And the patient sits on this bench and watches the world go by. Just everybody coming and going. So I come out, I got my coffee, and he jumps up and he says, I know you. And I said, Mr. Jones, you do know me. He said, high school. We went to high school together. I said, Mr. Jones, I'm your memory doctor. And he goes, you're doing a terrible job. And then I get in the car and I start to drive away. And he comes screaming at me. He says, stop, stop. And I'm like, what now? So I roll the window down and he reaches up and takes the coffee, my coffee, off the top of the car and hands it to me. And he says, you don't know how good this makes me feel. So the point about this story is we all have things that we do that we think egregious. And all of a sudden you start worrying and you get anxious. Am I losing it? All right. Here I got 2 parents that have, that died of dementia. And so, when I make a glitch like that, I've got something to worry about. Anxiety over memory loss causes memory loss. All right, anxiety. So if you do something stupid, just move on. All you are is human. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. Okay. All right. The second thing is the question, what can I do at this stage of my life to protect my brain? All right. Are there anything? Is it too late? No, it's not too late. The first thing is that you've got to understand that you think the most important number in your life is your retirement account when that number comes in. You know, you look at it and you go, I'm doing really good. You know, look at that. Stock market's up and I've got a bunch of money in the bank. That number doesn't really matter unless you can turn it into something positive in your life or the life of others. Otherwise, you're going to give it to a bunch of unappreciative children that they're going to know how to spend it. Okay. I love, there's a book called Die Broke, and it says, bounce the check to the undertaker. All right. My wife's, she's already done that. You know, I mean, she's, so the most important number in your life is your blood pressure. When you go in to that doctor and that nurse takes your blood pressure and she says, oh, you're a little nervous today. It's 165/98. Said, and oftentimes you'll say, well, it's always, I have white coat syndrome, meaning that when I'm around doctors and nurses, my blood pressure goes up. White coat syndrome doesn't exist. It means that you're running higher blood pressures all the time. So you tell them, I don't like these numbers and I feel like I need to be treated. People with white coat syndrome, or that they go in and their blood pressures go up, have a higher incidence of stroke, heart attack, and congestive heart failure. I will accept 140, 145 over 88. Okay, if you're 90 years old, I'm okay with that. I'm not going to try to get it down to 115 or anything. It used to be when Dale Enzer was in medical school that they said, don't worry about the top number, it's the bottom number. Well, the top number actually is probably more important. That was in the late 19th century, so it's not, you know, not that. So blood pressure, really important. The second thing is the number one marker for cognitive decline in a lifetime is hearing loss. Let me repeat that. The number one marker for cognitive decline, it's rare that I'll have a patient with full-blown dementia that their hearing is not impaired. So if your wife is, you know how this goes, all right? That, and usually it's the guy, and you know, he's going, huh, what'd you say? What'd you say? And the wife says, you're not hearing me. He said, don't yell at me. Don't yell. Okay, this goes on all the time. The third thing is sleep. When you're 90 years old, and it might be late 80s, you eat breakfast, most people take a little nap, men. Women hate to see men take naps. There's something about it, okay, that really chaps them. So what happens is that you take a nap and she'll go, and she comes in with her hands on her hips and say, what do you got planned for the day? So, I got another nap this afternoon. That's about it. But leave me alone. Okay. But sleep, I like 9 hours of sleep, even 10 hours of sleep. And a nap in the afternoon is a good thing. All right. It's okay. Females hate to nap, but it's just as important for you. The number one negative effect of alcohol is it disrupts sleep. And there are 3 stages of deep sleep. And it's when you get into that third stage, where you get that restful sleep, where the neuron actually shrinks and these Pac-Men come called microglia and eat up all of the toxins in your brain. So I like people to have at least 2 or 3 days a week where they don't drink any alcohol. And alcohol, as we age, you already know this. It used to be you could drink 3 beers or 4 beers at a picnic and you felt like you were fine. Probably weren't. Now, the enzyme that metabolizes alcohol the amount of it goes down in our bodies. So the alcohol has more of an effect. So just be careful. And actually, it's kind of like being aware. You know, someone puts a drink down and you're with your friends, drink the drink slowly. You don't have to throw it down and say, I want another one. And that's from someone that went to the University of Virginia in the 60s, okay? They'll probably take my diploma away because I'm making that advice. There are destructive medications, okay? Now, I'll have to tell you, the joke at Hopkins was on these, they're called benzodiazepams. And they are addictive. They cause memory issues. And but they also the Valium, Klonopin, Ativan, Xanax cause falls. Now the joke at Hopkins was don't ever start them, but it's very hard. It takes me 18 months to get someone off of a drug like Klonopin. So I'm not saying to stop them, but most of the sleeping medications have a cost, okay? They have a cost. You have to be very careful with them. They're also benzodiazepams. Exercise. At this stage in the late fragment, it might be simply walking around the block here or going to get the mail. It might be something very simple. And just because you're not on a treadmill, I don't want you on a treadmill because you know what happens there. You know, someone goes and you wave to them and the next thing you know, you're gone, you know. So I want you to be careful. I like you on terra firma, walking. Even if you have a walker, it's still exercise. Do not be intimidated by people who say, oh, I just ran 10 miles. Not interested. I don't care how many miles you ran, okay? Tell someone that cares. One of the things that we need in our lives toward the end is structure. We make lists out of things that we have to do today, and it doesn't get done. Make a short list. If it's got one thing on it, I like it, but that gets done. Also structure. I'm going to get up. I'm going to have a cup of coffee. I'm going to write 2 letters to my grandchildren between 8 and 9 o'clock, and I'm going to get it done. And then you can go and do anything you want. But we lack structure. And also you say, I don't want to do that. But once you sit down, actually, it's kind of enjoyable. So plant structure. And if you say you're going to do it, do it. All right. Back to late fragment. Okay. The last chapter, or the last part of several chapters, is where I give you the solutions, the grab bars. What are the important things that allow us to flourish in this late stage? It's different than any other part of your life, okay? The first thing is entitled resilience. And strangely enough, it's about my high school English teacher. Did anybody here go to Myers Park High School? Did you have Miss Baker? Didn't, okay. He was a Stenhouse. He was in the slower group. I don't know what is. I'm sorry, Mike, that was just too easy. Okay, just resilience. I know it. Well, I was there with your brothers too, my God. All right, so the deal is that resilience. Resilience is defined as adapting to new circumstances. But I want in my older patients resilience as being a defiance. I do not lose my place in line just because I've attained a certain age. We have to change our approach to things, and I'm going to describe it in one chapter, but Ms. Baker was my high school English teacher. She was amazing. And later in life, she was, she loved literature and poetry, and every English class started where she taught us quotes from about 15 different, from Shakespeare, Alexander Pope, Thomas Gray, and I still remember every one of them. And her point to us was that when you get older, you're going to need the wisdom that's in this literature. These heroes, these stories are going to become real to you. And so I carry her with me, and I was really glad that I could write this story about her. She lost her sister, and she thought she would die. So she went back and started to try to put her life back together again. And she was able to do it. But I said, what does courage look like in an 88-year-old retired teacher who was a spinster? She never was married. And yet that courage that she showed was as important as people who are in battle, oftentimes more so. So the character traits that we've had all our lives, don't discount the courage it takes sometimes to just put your feet on the floor and stand up in the morning and go about your business. Okay? That takes courage. That takes resilience. The second chapter is really important. It's called Vital Links. And it comes from a discussion I had with an old man in a library at one of the retirement centers. And told a story about his brother, Seth, who died in World War II at the Battle of Peleliu. And he told me, he said, I carry him with me every day. And now I spend more time with him. The point is that there are mentors that we've had, giants in our lives. And somehow, because of the distractions of every day, we lose their power in our life. We lose them. It takes an active process to think of the teachers, the coaches, the ministers, or the giants in our life. And what we want to do is actively go back and find their influence because it can sustain us. There's a chapter called Redefining Roles. I think that's what it is. It's a discussion I have with my grandson about tattoos. And he schools me and he tells me that tattoos really don't define someone, but the dismissiveness that you have over the tattoos defines you. We don't need to be negative. We don't necessarily have to buy into it, and we can pray that our kids don't get tattoos. But those things that other people have, there's two things we can say, oh, we're going to feel better because we don't have them. That's a very slippery slope, okay? Because the next thing you know, you've got it, and then where do you go when those those high winds blow? So I'm going to read you one of the chapters in the book. It's called So Much Depends Upon Lunch. And it's a story about a lawyer and his wife. And it just shows you, here it goes. So much depends upon lunch. Do anything, but let it produce joy. Walt Whitman. I spent so much time with this couple, and I love them so much that sometimes I'll get a little choked up, but I'll get back. But just forgive me for that. Let me tell you a love story. It involves Alex Jackson and his wife, Norma Berkeley. They have been married 64 years. Alex is 85 years old. Norma is a year older. They live in a retirement community here in Charlotte, and both of them have lived in Charlotte their entire lives. Alex has been a phenomenon from an early age. He was valedictorian of his high school class and valedictorian in his class at Princeton. He joined the Marines rather than being drafted, spending 2 years on active duty just before Vietnam. Following discharge from the service, he turned down scholarships to Harvard and Yale law schools to come home to Chapel Hill. It was always odd that Alex was never described as brilliant or even smart. What was said was, he's the kindest person on the planet. Norma was in the same high school class as Alex, but they didn't date till they both wound up in Chapel Hill. She received a master's degree in English. He studied law. After graduation, they returned home, and Norma taught English in the public schools. Alex joined a law firm in Charlotte. They adopted one child, a daughter, Nicole. As you might guess, Alex had a stellar career as a corporate lawyer, sought out for his uncanny common sense and insight. Norma was equally successful in her 45 years of teaching, and they both worked into their 70s. Retirement was seamless. It gave them more time together doing what they pleased. They traveled the world and enjoyed family and friends. A lifetime passed by. 7 years ago, they moved into a retirement center at the same time as 3 close couples Initially, they were in a cottage, but 3 years ago, they relocated to the main building in deference to declining mobility. About the time they made that switch, Alex was involved in an auto accident. While entering on a busy street past a blind curve, he was hit by an oncoming car. The damage done to both cars was nothing compared to the damage done to Alex's confidence. I never saw it coming, he explains. Instead of blaming the speed of the other car, he took full responsibility and sadly never drove again. Norma always drove. He sat vigilantly in the passenger seat. The thought that he might hurt someone guaranteed that he was always nervous driving anywhere. They never drove at night and drove only in familiar surroundings. I will let Alex explain why they came to see me. Chuck, I'm slowly going downhill with my memory. I struggle with names in the dining room, literally trying to remember the names of people I have known all my life. Norma is amazing with names and covers for me. I have sleep apnea, but I'm no longer able to follow all the steps and how to use the CPAP. I have quit trying. I know you say that names and technology don't matter, but they matter to me. I know I am slipping and I see an uncertain future. Take reading, for example. Norma and I have never watched TV except for sports. We are both readers. Norma is an English teacher. We often will read the same book, sometimes reading to one another. In a new book, I have trouble remembering the storyline from one day to the next. And because of this, we started watching Masterpiece Theater on PBS. I need subtitles to understand what they are saying. Even then, I lose the plot line. CHE, me, so do I. AJ, I'm asking repetitive questions and short-term memory is going. I meet with Norma alone. She confirms what Alex has shared. She adds, he always apologizes when he asks me to repeat something. I know it's killing him, but it doesn't bother me. At our age, I think we are holding our own. We do our thing, a careful history, physical exam, neuropsychiatric testing, MRI, and full set of labs. His blood pressure is marginally high, 155 or 88, and the MRI shows that they're called white matter changes, slightly more prominent than expected even for his age at 86. White matter changes are historically linked to cardiovascular changes in the brain. For someone at his intelligence level, the score on his MOCA, 26/30, I feel there's a problem, albeit minor. I explain that this is mild cognitive impairment. It is defined as mild memory loss that doesn't interfere with everyday life. It's called amnestic because at this point, it only affects his short-term memory. There's no depression and no medication is needed. Parting advice is simply reassurance. CHE, Alex, 90% of your life is working in an enviable fashion. We are not going to let the 10% that isn't undermine our happiness. At 85 and 86 years of age, you're both still on the honor roll. 3 months later, they are together. I'm happy to report your blood. This is me talking to Alex. I'm happy to report your blood pressure is now acceptable at 138/82. High blood pressure drives memory loss. This positive response will help keep you from declining. I like to know what your routines are. What is going at your house? What's going on at your house when things are working? On any given morning, when you all wake up and say, this is going to be a great day because of this, what is this? Norma, we are slaves to routine. We get up at the same time every morning, 7:30. We have the same breakfast every day, orange juice, English muffin, red pepper jelly, and coffee. AJ, the English muffin is the crowning achievement of Western civilization. CHE, I agree. Norma, if we have family obligations, they would dominate, but that is rare. After breakfast, we sit down and plan where we're going to lunch. We eat one major meal a day, always at lunch. It may seem trivial, but we consider it the secret sauce to happiness on any given day. CHE, I love this. Where do you go? AJ, depends on the weather. We have about 5 go-to places. We rotate depending on different factors. It's a complex and nuanced decision. CHE, how does the weather come in? AJ, if it's raining, we can't go to one of them. CHE, what are the 5? AJ, Phil's Deli, Shake Shack, Chick-fil-A, Bricktops, and Dairy Queen. Each place has a different vibe, not only because of the food, but mostly from the different people we encounter there. For instance, Bricktops is a reservation place. We love some of the dishes, but the clientele is affluent and predictable. We like to sit at a vantage point and watch the world go by. There is no place to do that there. We love characters, and characters don't hang out at Bricktops. CHE, what is your bottom line favorite? Norma, Dairy Queen, by far. AJ, no question, Dairy Queen. CHE, why? AJ, first, the food is great. We always split everything. We get a foot long and split it. We have to negotiate the blizzards. I think the Butterfinger is the bomb, but Norma tries to hold out for Heath Bar. But the real reason is the vantage point. There's a park bench next to the outdoor tables, and we can see everyone and everything from there. Everyone is equal at Dairy Queen. You wait in line outside, no VIP tables or favored guests. If it's raining, everybody gets wet. Norma, it's America waiting in line. It is near the courthouse. Alex recognizes the lawyer standing next to the judge. Right behind them is the defendant with an ankle surveillance device on his ankle. There is something about the line that makes the whole scene authentic. It is just fun to watch. AJ, okay, Norma, we love lunch. Why is this story important? Why a whole chapter on two people going to lunch? I think you know the answer. For starters, it's not about lunch. It's about love. Why do you think they're able to deal with his memory loss so effectively? Here is a man who could always rely on one thing in life. It never let him down, his intellect. He was not just smart, he was a wonder kind. He is aware that his gift is being slowly taken away. He has lost the ability to follow plot lines and read for content. However, his saving grace is the devotion from his wife that trumps the memory loss. The apologies for asking repetitive questions are met with affirmation and love. They are a formidable team, asking no quarter for the subtle chinks in the armor brought on by shared longevity. Anticipation is the human capacity to look forward to, expect, envision the future. It has a positive connotation and is linked to hope and promise. In slang, it is to be on to something. The something can be anything. It may be lunch, a walk, a big game, bridge, gardening, or an encounter with a person you love. It doesn't matter what, as long as it provides even one skip in a long line of heartbeats. I would give anything to tell you that the rituals for Alex and Norma are still in play. Sadly, they are not. Alex survived the first of 2 strokes and returned to baseline. The second stroke closed the book, suddenly and thankfully. Norma moved into assisted living immediately. She lost contact with reality without him and declined rapidly. I have been to the Dairy Queen and sat on the bench where they shared the footlong, the blizzard, and the search for characters. I'm not saying in the grand scheme that this was all that important. No, wait. That's exactly what I'm saying. It is all that important. It borders on crucial. In the late fragment, our day-to-day routines might not have as big an impact as our actions during our careers. But these rituals are a huge reason that joy and delight are attainable no matter how long we live. They might not involve a major business success, but lunch, after all, is lunch and will always be important in its own way. After all, life's huge business deals never come with a blizzard. Just saying. So, I'm gonna stop there. I want, if there is a question that people always want to ask me, is what have you learned? What seems to work on the people that seem to have gotten this and that have the balance? And I love the word fearless. When you have thought about your fate and your relationship with others, and you have done what you can in this world, anxiety and fear disappear. You become fearless. And, but it's important to go through that ritual. And also, one of the things that I see is a recurring theme is gratitude. Just so thankful for the life that people have had. And it didn't mean thank you for letting me be a success or to make a lot of money. Thank you for being allowed to love and to receive love. Humility often was parallel with it. So my final charges are, even so, be comfortable and proud of the life that you've had. It's not perfect, but you know what? It's like one of those lifetime achievement awards that they give to the famous actors or the directors. Not every film that they did was worthy of an Oscar, okay? And they've done some pretty bad stuff, all right? But each of us needs to get a lifetime achievement award because we've done some good things. And now, second thing is, we have responsibilities to others. And something about the aging brain that makes us think of our own lot every day. And it takes a little bit of oomph to work through that, to be thinking about how can I impact someone else's life today? When you do that, what comes back is far greater than the selfish motives. And the last thing is that every day, we as humans are continuing to evolve. We have the potential to be better humans tomorrow than we are today. And just because you've lived a lot of tomorrows doesn't mean that you've lost that capacity. That, in thinking today, yesterday that's already in the file, but today I get to write a new chapter in my story. And that's where that fearlessness dissipates and disappears. Thank y'all for listening.
Yeah, I forgot one really important thing. The money from the sale of the books goes to the foundation, Memory and Movement Charlotte Foundation. You're not giving it to Chuck, you're giving it to the world. We appreciate it.
One other thing. We did a audible book, and I didn't do it on the first book, but I did it on the second book. And I realized the reason why we did it, and there's no way that we're going to be able to recoup it, but that a lot of my patients, as they age, no longer are able to read, just like this character. And so I wanted to be able to reach out with my voice so that they could connect to it, so that they could connect to these havens of strength. And I didn't want them to be eliminated from that or prevented from accessing it. And so I did the guy that was doing it, our producer and stuff, said that he wanted me to do it. And then I got my wife, Mary, does all the female parts, and I do the male parts. And it's funny because we're going along the first day, and she turns to me, she said, "Chuck, you sound just like an undertaker." And I said, "What? You can't say that." So then I started getting all bubbly, which wasn't me, you know. And but we had fun doing it. And the Audible book, Melanie. Is Melanie here? She's out there. You can get that, I think, you can get it on Amazon. And you can also, I think, access it from the Memory Center, okay? I'll be glad to answer any questions that y'all might have. Yes, sir.
1985, my dad had a major heart attack and died. The doctor with him was one of the most compassionate people I'd ever come in contact with. About 3 years later, I was in an emergency room and ran into him again. And we got to talking, and I said, "What are you doing now?" He says, "I'm doing emergency room only." I said, "Why?" He says, "It was too painful for me to get close to my patients. How do you deal with your compassion and getting close to patients? The emotion, the drain, that sort of thing."
Well, the heart surgery was pretty straightforward, okay? With Dale was we were at Duke together, that's where you sort of go in, you do your thing, and the complications were devastating. I'm a perfectionist and a worrier, and that was hard, but I always knew that I would learn from the complications, and I always felt like I was getting better. And then, of course, when I developed the tremor, I knew that I wasn't going to be at my best, so I had to stop. One of the reasons why I had to retire was because I knew physically I couldn't keep up the connections at the level that I was at. And I had a choice of all of a sudden backing off and saying, I can't do that anymore. I can't do that. So I had to stop. It is hard. It's been hard. I practiced medicine for 50 years, and I feel like that sphere around sick people is so sacred. And that's one of the reasons why there are times when you can't do it anymore and you've got to back away. But it's not easy. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Want to renew my passport.
There you go. I like that. I like that. Go. Don't give in. You don't lose your place in line. I think that the last part, Directive, is a poem by Robert Frost, where he takes us through this landscape, this barren landscape, to a spring. And Directive, that's what I wanted from the last part of the book, a directive to help people realize what are the things that can sustain us. Just a discussion with a grandchild or a daughter or a sister, and just kind of talk about the things that's going on in your mind. But you say, oh gosh, if I open up, I'm going to be vulnerable. Remember, that's what love is. That's where it is. It's vulnerable. And so don't close down. I saw it all the time, the people, and remember, fearless, just easy stuff. Thank you.